see Deb is out there. How are you doing, Deb?
Hi, Erin. I was just thinking that I think that AM is Andy McCabe, maybe that you were talking about on that drop.
Yeah, Andy McCabe, that's it.
But yeah, that's interesting about the house in Texas. Yeah, they got to do something. I think it's funny because the last time that they tried to do this or have a special session, the Democrats left town. And if he does it, if Ken Paxton does it and lock the doors so they can't get out, they're gonna scream kidnapping. But on the other hand, maybe they can actually get something done.
Well, Hakeem Jeffries went down there. The House were all, we gotta go home. Well,
Oh
that's not
yeah.
where they went. And a whole contingent went with
Well, Jasmine Crockett
Hakeem
was there.
Jeffries, and he was down in Texas trying to stir up trouble with the press about how the Republicans are stealing the country and this and that. I mean, I kind of get their point. I wish Trump would have released the goods about how they stole the census before we made this move. I guess he probably just wanted to do it suddenly so people didn't have time to react, I guess, because it does seem really shady. But I guess we're just at the point where we don't care. We have to save the country. And if the Democrats take the House by any means, um, and then, who knows what could happen?
Yeah.
We're just sort of in a civil war almost situation here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it for quite a while. I don't use the word civil war, but we're definitely on the precipice because how many people are just so battle weary? They get the information, they try. I mean, you go on to any social platform, you still got I was hoping all the bots would go away, right? And we could get some truth out there, but you still go out there and just, you know, there's still all these bots or these paid activists on social media still spewing whatever the talking point is for the week, which is, Orange Man bad and Orange Man's a pedo, Orange Man sniffed hair, Orange Man, he's a felon. And it's like, I was hoping all that would go away, but that hasn't gone away. And it's just, so people can, oh, he's a liar. That's the next big one. You really trust anything he says? He's a liar. Well, prove what you say. They don't prove it, they just regurgitate what they hear. And it's,
I
and
mean,
on the flip side, too, you got people who are just now starting to understand what's going on and they're hearing it but they can't really come have it come back either because I've been in that position where yeah, I hear it and I believe it and I see it and there's the proof, but trying to explain somebody who just don't want to see the truth, that's difficult too.
I just don't care about people that don't want to know about it. And really, in the big picture, they don't need to know about it. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're just so politically uninvolved, then just don't vote, okay? If you're not going to take the time to look into things, then screw you. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, you're whatever. But I just hope people who have Trump derangement syndrome, nothing's going to change them, and I just don't care. I just hope that Trump will be a big enough person to at some point here he needs to crown his according to the Q post they already have it planned out who's next after Trump, if you believe that, whatever Q is. But I hope that whoever it is will be a fresh start for people with Trump derangement syndrome, like if it's JD Vance or whoever it is, I don't even know. But whoever it is, that somehow they can have like a very separate like persona from Trump, just in the sense that people would give this other person a fresh chance. I don't know if they would or not, but it's possible. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how demonized JD Vance is with these people. I just really don't understand. I do understand why they hate Trump. I totally understand that. And there's a lot of things like you can really wrap this Epstein thing around Trump's neck because there's a lot of pictures and there's definitely smoke. We just know there's no fire.
Right.
But he can't win with any of that, you know? But
Yeah.
hopefully there's whoever the plan is to be next is not quite as demonized, doesn't have pictures with Epstein, doesn't talk like a guy from Queens who makes even me have a nervous breakdown sometimes with the weird words and the repetitive nature and kind of the lie. I mean, Trump doesn't lie, but he does. Like he just when he doesn't want to talk about something, he changes the subject. Some people consider that lying. I consider that being uh misleading. There's kind of a difference. But,
Well,
his stories change. Like all his Epstein stories do actually change. And it's not so much he's lying, it's just he doesn't want to talk about it because it's no matter what he says, it it can lead to other things that lead to other things that are not a good look. So,
I think
um
I think part of that too is either there's information that's just not ready to be released, or it's and because people aren't ready to hear it, or it could be that if he changes the subject, I had the thought in my head. Now I can't remember what I was going to. My point was going to be he. I don't you hate when that happens when you have this thought, you have a point, and it's
mm,
like now I can't remember what the point was, but it's not. I don't know about misleading per se, but he's uh, I lost my point. I lost my train of thought. I'll probably think of it as you get off.
he's just right. And so he'll say he answers a question a different way. Sometimes he'll answer the same question a different way depending on who the audience is. So to one reporter, he'll say, yeah, like, he's like, oh, Epstein was poaching my employees. And then another reporter asks, was it Virginia? And then he's like, I don't know. And then another one asked, and he said, yeah, you guys know it's her. Or it was something along that lines. It's just something he didn't want to talk about. So he like got trapped. He had to answer in the end because they kind of had him trapped on the plane. He sounded kind of tired. Normally he finds a way to not answer at all. But
Yeah.
it's like I don't understand why answering that question is a problem. I mean, to me, it's something you'd want to talk about that you kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of your club and that he took one of your employees' daughters and turned her into whatever you want to call it, a call girl or whatever. And so he like why don't you want to talk about that? I just don't get it. And then
Mm-hmm.
because he's from Queens, so he says words. I know everyone makes fun of me because use weird words and I have a Chicago thing going on, but he has a Queens thing going on. And he uses like when he wants to say something, instead of saying like I had a penny, he would say I have a coin. You know what I mean? He always finds the most vague word, and sometimes he uses words, I don't know if it's just regional, where I'm like that's not even the right word for what you're saying. Like
Uh,
that's not even a word, period. He'll
well,
even just sort of make up weirdness and
I
you're
mean,
like
I
and it
think
it drives me bananas. I go crazy. I'm like, oh, why can't you just answer the question?
I think on some of that is for he wants people to research because he says something just to, yeah, I mean, because then you have all these people digging, trying to find out what does he mean, Yeah, I think some of that is that. But what I was trying to say is, I think he tries to avoid answering questions, and if he does, he tries to skirt around it because he knows it's a trap question. It's a gotcha question, and so he tries to be as non-committal as possible on some things because I think some of it too is he probably knows more than we think he does, or people, but he's got to have that plausible deniability because if people knew what he knew, people would be probably really mad. It's like, why didn't you do something before? But he's got to, and unfortunately, he's got to play the game at this point to, it's like let the courts decide. A lot of us is like, why are we letting these activist judges even rule on some of this stuff, and yet his response is let the courts decide because he wants people to understand the court system has been so corrupted too that you gotta go back to the basics of court procedures. And one of the things I'm saying is, we gotta get rid of the court of public opinion. Give me the facts. I don't want to hear anything, just straight facts. What are the facts? Don't use inflammatory words to get me trying to get me emotional. I don't like pictures. I don't like to see the sweet old lady trying to cross the street getting beaten up by a kid on a bicycle. Just give me the bare bones. I don't want to see all that. I want to make a judgment based on anything that is not based on emotion. So, but that's just my
Yeah,
theory, my opinion.
right. But then when I boil it down, I'm like, here I am, just this like nobody schmedley on a microphone. And I'm complaining about a multi-billionaire person that's running the whole world. It's like my advice must be completely wrong. I mean, it seems like doing the most annoying things like that, just never saying anything, using weird words, is some sort of magical formula for becoming the most powerful person in the world. So this is why I'm not a powerful person, because I could not live my life that way, where everything you say means nothing and you use freaking weird words for no reason. It's some kind of psychological thing he does, maybe to make people so annoyed they walk away from him. And maybe that's how he like clears a path, is by being the most annoying person in the room. I don't know. I don't really get it, but I just leave it alone because he's doing something right and I'm obviously totally wrong. So it's like, but I'll just say I could never be like married to that kind of crazy. If you took the money away, I could never be married to someone where every time you ask them something, it's not really an answer and they use freaking weird words where you're like, what? I would go crazy. I just would.
Well, remember, I mean, you're basing everything about with the information you know, and that's all you can do. You can only make a judgment based on what you know, or suspect, or can verify. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't make you a bad person, or let's see, let's see, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's just a different personality. I
Yeah.
mean, Mo's saying maybe he's different behind closed doors. You would hope so, but people who are kind of close to him say that what you see of him in public is exactly how he is. So maybe like, Melania's just someone that maybe the language thing with her. I don't know. I mean, maybe he speaks Slovenian perfectly with her. I don't know. I just know I would go out of my freaking mind if like you ask him, a question and he's just won't give you an answer. Like, what are you? Oh, I would just go crazy. My father is that way. Maybe that's why it annoys me.
Could
My
be.
mother tells me famous stories about she'd ask my dad, like, just something really basic, like, do you want a ham sandwich or do you want a tuna sandwich for lunch? And he could not answer the question. He would contemplate he would sidetrack, like he just couldn't answer the question. She would go in the kitchen and cry, like tear her hair out. So hence they, were married 15 years or whatever. And uh he's a great guy, but he's got kind of a Trumpism with him. And also my father was very successful. So this seems to be some sort of strategy that if you never answer anything, somehow it makes you successful. It's really weird.
Well, I think part of it is just the personality. I worked with, I can remember I had a supervisor. He was an engineer, highly, and he would talk in such a manner that it was like trying to understand what he was saying was really difficult. And it's like I made a comment to another coworker about it, and he goes, "Well, maybe he's trying to get you on his level instead of come down, so that he's not dumbing it down for him." But I mean, the man that I actually built a database on how to track some of our caseload, and he took what I did, he completely destroyed it and and rebuilt it from the ground up to the way he wanted it. It was like he could have done it himself, so he had to have a starting point, and it was what I did. And it wasn't something that I did overnight either. It took me about a few weeks anyway to work on this database and getting all the, not just the information that needs to be sorted and everything, but and everything. It was the look, the visual too.
Yeah,
So,
I've had bosses like that. Yeah,
so
that's the other thing about Trump. A lot of people say that Trump acts this way because he's a narcissist. And that's because every other word he says, it's the biggest, it's the best, it's the top, it's the most beautiful, the everything's over the top, which is another, I think, like a Queen's thing. It's like a 1950s sales strategy. And I think that for a lot of people that really annoys them. But then you hear from people that know him that it's not even that he's over the top selling things. It's that he's really that excited about them. That it's like a genuine excitement, and he really actually believes that some of the like things he does is the best. It's not, I mean, it's not even that he's faking it. Even things that 99.999% of people are kind of like not the best, he really actually believes it's the best.
I think that, and when it comes to that kind of thing, it's probably, it's trying to keep the positivity, because if you, one of the easiest thing to do, if you get in a negative mindset, it's so easy to you don't accomplish anything if you start focusing on the negative. So it's probably a strategy he learned either because of his family history, like his brother being from what I understand, a drinker, and it's probably something that it was able to keep him focused instead of focusing on something that maybe his brother was doing. He could focus on trying to be the best, keep that level of energy up, or else,
He's a disciple of Peel. He's a Peel guy. Peel is a preacher who wrote that book. He's sort of in a way, he's um into like theosophy, the power of positive thinking. That if you think positively about something, that you're blessed with it actually coming true. And that it's like a way of it's a method of um disciplining your mind to put negative thoughts out of your head. Avoid people who say negative things about what you're trying to accomplish, et cetera, et cetera. And just by the sheer will of positive thinking, those things will come true. I believe, didn't Oprah, I think, dabbled in that for a while, the positive power of positive thinking, and some other people. But Trump actually believes it. And I believe the guy's name's Peel. And he's talked about how he um for years was a supporter of and believer in appeal and the power of positive thinking. And this is just another thing that makes people crazy. That's the
Mhm.
thing, like Trump's just this combination of if there's certain types of people, like I really love Trump, I really like him, but there are times where I have to like walk away and take a break because he starts with the weird stuff and I'm like, okay, I love this guy. Everything he's doing is great. He's such a patriot and everything, but I want to slap him. So I have to like turn it off for a few minutes and chill out. But I totally understand why some people have this visceral reaction to him, the visceral orange man bad Trump derangement syndrome, because it's an odd combination of mannerisms, speech, traits that that is really unique, very different, and it's hard for a lot of people to just deal with it. you know, it seems dishonest to be the power of positive thinking to a lot of people seems dishonest
Yeah.
because Trump, makes lemonade out of lemons of everything and most people are like that's just dishonest. This is because some things actually just suck. So it's weird, man. I mean, he's a one of a kind. I mean, for whatever reason, Steve Bannon and certain people, Steve Bannon goes around and makes a speech that Trump is going to be a president that's sort of like a George Washington too. That George Washington, is the father of our country. Then uh, Lincoln was the father of the post Civil War country, which was a very different constitution. I mean, before the Civil War, you were a citizen of your state. After the Civil War, you were a citizen of the United States. Uh, so we came out of the Civil War literally a completely different country conceptually. And Steve Bannon claims that Trump is the George Washington or father of the country that we're going to have going forward after this fourth turning, where I mean, constitutions hit 250 years. It's like the fourth turning, where everything's just so corrupt and broken down that it has to be fixed. So it's interesting, and all of these men all were very criticized by one portion of the population and beloved by the other. you know, And it just seems like, they say Washington was very flawed. He was very hard on himself. He was not an educated man. He was supposedly bullheaded and um, a little dense sometimes. Lincoln, we've heard all about Lincoln. He's manic depressive. He had a lot of flaws. He's another guy. He never answered a question. He always spoke in parables and Bible quotations and metaphors. He wouldn't directly address things. His wife was, some say, a opium addict, lunatic. Some say a prophet. So all this stuff, and now you have Trump, and Trump's equally as, charismatic, yet he has his fans. He has people that just absolutely hate him. and he's just this combination of divine intervention that happened to come along at the right time, as predicted by many, many people that he would be president someday when we needed him, and it happened. It's really insane. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's gonna probably get insaner. I'm just ready for and not I've been saying it for weeks and months. I'm just ready for the healing to begin until we see some really big name arrests and convictions. It's not just about the arrests; it's the convictions, and we're not really going to be able to start healing as a nation. I don't think. I just hope it's sooner than later. Did you hear what he said? He said, I can't remember his exact quote, but he put something out there I think something about money's big money's going to come in the next 5 or 6 months or something like that. I got a glimpse of the post, so I don't know exactly what it was referring to.
Did you say big money?
I don't know if it's big money or something. It sounded like my interpretation of it was. Let me see if I can find it. I'll see if I can find it.
I don't really care about big money. Well, yeah. Oh, I know. I think you're talking about when. So this week he ended
Probably the
he set the
tariffs.
tariffs for all countries, and he said that all this money is going to come in off the tariffs. They're
Yeah.
talking about giving people a dividend. I
Right.
don't want a freaking check. I want you to pay down the freaking, help my son pay down the debt.
Yeah.
Don't give
Oh,
me a check. I already
that's
got COVID checks. I don't
that's
need
what
a
it
check.
is. Okay, now I found it. Okay, so he says the U.S. will boom in 5 or 6 months from now. So maybe that's a Q post. Maybe that's a calm or something. I don't know.
It's yeah, it's the tariff thing, and it seems to be working. And I'm, except for we're apparently at nuclear war with Russia right now. That's not so hot. But it's like, oh well, there's that. That Putin said they were gonna nuke us. And then Trump says, "Well, I've moved subs that can hit Moscow." But we all know those subs have been sitting there forever. They've been able to hit us, and we've been able to hit them forever. So it's a war of words at this point, or maybe even totally fake, depending on what you think. But there's that. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just want them to pay down the debt because I don't want to owe the Fed anything because I don't. They're European banks, and I will admit I'm a bit of a Europhile, I guess. I read European history and study European history more than and almost anything else. So I have this love affair with Europe, but I'm pretty disenchanted with them at this point. They're horrible people and they're doing horrible things to the leaders are doing horrible things to European people and they're falling back into the old wars, the old fights, Germany, Russia, all the Slavic nations. Now, the Balkans are kind of it's just the same old freaking stuff. It's like they're never learn anything. And I'm just kind of fed up with Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
it's like I don't know, it's I kind of get Trump's thing, but
well, I mean, I when I went to Scotland back in 2015, the tour guide I had, yeah, he talked about how that they talked about it then about how the immigration was out of control even then, and how like Europe is considered, or yeah, England was considered one time as a Christian nation, and they said you probably not even half of the populace was considered themselves Christians back then. So yeah, I mean it's you got and
it's
not.
going to be like I said, a civil war, a caliphate
Mm-hmm.
because I believe in Britain this week. Is it Britain or Germany? One of them was considering setting up Sharia courts,
I
and
think it
that's
was
not going to work out so well.
I think it was Germany. I think you're right about that. I think it was
Right.
Germany.
And so hopefully, seeing as all they got their guns taken away, I guess it's going to be, maybe all the taking watching video games about using all old school armor, swords, machetes, I don't even know what you call all those things, the spiky ball on a chain and all Dungeons and Dragons type thing. Maybe that's what the war will be like, which, in some sense is interesting. But I don't know what's going to happen, man. But when you have Sharia courts operating in your country, you got major problems. Germany, of course, isn't really, I don't consider it one country. Uh, Originally, they were many principalities. the whole unification thing, not such a hot idea, actually. I kind of get where Putin's going with that. Like, yeah, that German thing, they're fighting again, and not so great. And regionally, they're not unified. You can see the way they vote, the different regions have completely different flavors. So I don't know how about, but if you're trying to take areas that are traditionally German and uh flood them with put them under Sharia law, I don't see that working out well. Some areas might be okay. Other areas, yeah, not so much. I don't think so.
Well, I hope we. Oh, great. I hope it doesn't happen. We don't need Sharia law. We know if you like, most. I mean, I'm again. I'm not very familiar, but from what I understand with Sharia law, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to have. So people are fighting it
Right.
for a
They said
reason.
that, oh, we're only doing the Sharia law for like a family court. And that's because they're going to allow polygamy, like wife burning and all this stuff, the marriage of uh, young children, brides, and all that, that would be handled in the Sharia courts. That was my understanding, like civil family court type matters. Um, wills and past the fact that the women don't or can't inherit in Islam, and divorced women have to go, like if your husband dies, the brother or the family has to take you in, and there's it's just a totally different culture, and the laws, uh Christian based laws or whatever Western law is very different. So it just is.
Well, the thing is if they allow it in family court, it won't be long before it becomes just normal for it'll penetrate other places too. I mean, that's how it starts. You go to
Yes.
some of the other countries that are been taken over. That's how it starts.
Yeah, that is how it starts. And if you allow polygamy, if you allow child brides and that, I can think of a couple groups of leftists who would be very happy to be able to have child brides and multiple wives, beat their wives, um, cut them out of the will. I believe if you cheat on your husband, there's like a curse put on you where you're considered actually dead. And so you go in the streets and you become a prostitute slash beggar that no one in your family or your husband's family can acknowledge as even being alive. So it's, a great system, Sharia.
Yeah,
So shunning, I think, is the religious word is
yeah,
shunning, right?
shunning or
Yes. So that's a thing.
or excommunicated is another one.
Right. Well, shunning though, I believe means that you no longer exist. Like
You're
you're not even on this planet anymore. You are
you're
not
you're
you're
dead to me.
invisible.
You're dead to me.
So that's a thing. So, I could say all kinds of things about some of these practices that would get me in trouble, but I won't. And if we could go in that direction in this country, because there are certain sects of religion here that have polygamy, shunning, and child brides. And we had a little war in this country, called, a little thing called the Mormon War. And so it was a thing we went through that I talked about that a lot at one point. That was one of my favorite shows, talking about that history, because it's so interesting. But yeah, that was the thing, and that got settled. So,
Yep.
all All right. Well, I will let you go. I'm going to see what's going on around here and a lot of craziness this week. So I will see you all tomorrow morning.
Okay, Erin. Thank you for
Alrighty. Have a
thanks for the
wonderful show.
convo. Sorry.
Have a good evening.
You too. Thanks for the convo.
Bye.
Bye. Hey everybody, this is on a wing and a prayer scene on Patriots Soapbox. Thursday mornings 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Eastern, adjust for your time zone, and then on Saturday evenings 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern, again adjust for your time zone. And I am going to put out my Rumble account and my uh, uh, Ooga, my YouTube account, and then if you can, I'm going to open up my Rumble and the Rumble Studio in a moment. As soon as I do the opener, and we'll go from there. So if you're going to stick around, I hope you do stick around, and let's see what we can do today. What kind of trouble can we get into, right? Or let's see if I can actually keep my. I got kicked off Thursday morning 3 times. 3 times off of Rumble. And if Dano, if you wanna, you're more than welcome to join me if you like. I will. Anyway, so I will be right back. And when I get the show opener, and I'll be right back. All right, everybody, am I still coming through? I know my share screen I got kicked out. So let me see if I can bring this up. It's gonna be one of those nights. I guess either I never can tell. Is it me or is it that I'm over a target? Hold on. Okay. Yeah, not my share. It's you. Oh, come on. Let me have my illusions of grandeur and believe that I'm over the target. Let me. All right. Okay. Let me do this again. I'm gonna try this again anyway. All right. There we go. Let's try it again.
Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand.
Okay, everybody, can you hear me now? Give me a thumbs up or 5 by 5. If I pause my background processes, I don't know how to do all of that. Poe, I've done everything I can think of. I do it clean. I don't. I don't know what to tell you. So anyway, we come back in. It's the restreaming. Well, I'm not streaming on other platforms right now. But anyway, what can I say? Let me.
Hey, Deb.
Hey, Dano, how are you?
I was just getting ready for the show. How you doing?
All right. Obviously having tech issues again, but it could be that I have too many windows up. That seems to be the major problem most of the time. But the reason why I didn't stop it when y'all said I was muted is because I am recording, so that when I go back and live stream, or when I go back and add the recording back to Rumble and YouTube, then I will have the whole thing. So that's the reason why. So
If you're having process, hey Deb, if you're having process issues, memory issues, that recording may add to the problem, right? So you may want to iron that out, for the final product, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I could help you if I was there doing this stuff over, remotely. I'm well, Pat. I don't have the patience for that stuff anymore. But
I hear you.
One of those things, if I could put my hands on it, I'd try to help you out there.
I hear you. Don't worry. Yeah, I definitely hear you on that.
With computers, you're usually just one click away. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Well, when
things don't work right.
Yeah, when it comes to computers, I just totally don't know anything. But no, you know what? It seems like I don't have major issues. I can share screen. I can talk. I can do this. But it's like if I'm doing a video, it just.
Yeah, all that recording, streaming, it takes up a lot of CPU memory stuff. So if you're already, it's like overloading a truck or something. If you're already struggling to go uphill with it, you don't want to add more to it.
Yeah.
But we understand. No worries there. I heard you shout out for me, so I figured I'd jump in and, join to the conversation. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
Not trying to interrupt your show, though. I was just trying to add to it if I can help.
Oh no, that I appreciate it. No, actually, I do have some things about, because I last Thursday I focused on the shootings in Manhattan, and then of course you had also the Flint shootings, and then that's coming up, and there's all these shootings. They're all distractions, I really think. And I've got some things, but I got a question for you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see that about Elizabeth Warren? And I shouldn't laugh. Because Elizabeth Warren falling on the Senate floor, and I saw people were saying that the Republicans laughed about it. And you know what? We need to be bigger than that, really. I got to thinking about that. It's like, I think it's frustration with everything that's going on and how we've been attacked, but I think that it's really a sad thing, the fact this woman fell on the floor, no matter how corrupt she is,
Well, I missed that, Deb. She fell on the floor?
Yeah, she tripped. Let me get that.
But I agree with that point. It's one of those things where we've been going through this for years, where we've been castigated, to say the least. And as this stuff is sort of vindicating our position, it's hard not to want to say, like, I told you so, or, blah, 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 but truly, if we're to like heal past through this, I don't know. I'm not speaking for everybody else, but just being understanding, because we were in their shoes to a certain degree at one point too, right? In our own relative ways. So yeah, laughing and making jokes. It's just sort of, I mean, if you're going to label people, what kind of label would that be, right? It doesn't matter what party they're in.
Yeah.
Some of it's fun and lighthearted. I'm all for that, but they were literally trying to kill us in 2020. That's pretty deep.
Yeah, let me see if I can get that up. There we go. And Ted Cruz, of all people, Ted Cruz, not that there's anything wrong with Ted Cruz, but he helped her, Elizabeth Warren falls
What?
on Senate floor as Republicans offer bipartisan assistance during Israel vote. So the Massachusetts Democrat tipped over desk while attempting to sit during Israel's resolution vote. So here she is. It looks like that's a picture.
If you want to send me the links, I can try to share if that helps. But I've yet to see that. Okay.
So I appreciate. Don't get me wrong.
Does it show?
Appreciate the help, and believe me, if I will, if I need it, I'll definitely say, okay, Dano, you cook it. But it just says that she took a tumble on the Senate floor Wednesday during a vote. The footage showed Warren attempting to sit on a desk. That is kind of odd. Why would she go to sit on a desk instead of on a chair? Then she fell backwards, tipping over the desk and falling on the floor. In a rare showing of bipartisan, her Republican colleagues, including Senators Ted Cruz of Texas and Susan Collins of Maine, rushed up to help her. But there she is. You see that?
Does it show the video?
It doesn't show a video. It just looks like it's a picture. But Warren got up as Cruz gave her his hands. Republican Senators Rand Paul of Kentucky and John Barrasso of Wyoming were seen walking over to offer assistance. The fall happened as the Senate was taking a vote on two resolutions to block military sales to Israel, which Warren voted in favor of. So the resolutions were proposed by Senator Bernie Sanders, of course, a harsh critic of Israel's ongoing war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. I don't like this whole thing. Anyway, every Republican voted against it. He's not my president, never was the president, because we know this election was stolen. Had several slips and falls while in the White House. In 2023, he tumbled to the ground during the commencement ceremony at the U.S. Air Force Academy. So here we see Joe Biden. I don't think that's Joe Biden. I think it's probably his body double. In 2024, he slept while walking down the stairs of existing Air Force One in Michigan. And, everybody remember how Ford used to get laughed at because he was always tripping on things. So anyway, I was just going through my notes on that, but I really think like you said, if we want to see our nation have some healing, we need to show compassion. And that's one of the hardest things, we're told to pray for our enemies. That is one of the hardest things I do.
Right. Be the change. Be the change you want to see, right?
Yeah. So let's see. So Patriot Arian says she sat on a small desk and it tipped over and she landed on her behind. So anyway. So here's what I wanted to ask you. I got to thinking about, Erin kind of brought it up. Hold on, I gotta get a cough real quick. So when Erin talked about the debt and everything, and I know we have the EOs, the EOs to pay down our debt, all these assets from these people that are, the theory is that will pay down the debt. But then I get to thinking, who owes our debt, or who holds our debts? Is it China? But correct me wrong. Why would we owe China? We were sold to China. Hillary gave them backdoor access. You know, if
Well, Deb,
Hillary,
there is a there. Well, I'm sorry. I was just gonna answer your question, but go ahead.
it's kind of a two-parter, well, three-parter if depending. But if Hillary Clinton uh, gave access to all of our military secrets, like there's evidence that shows, or to keep out of legal hot water, allegedly. If she did that, and then we have the issue with China buying our farmlands by our military bases, wouldn't that indicate that our debt would be null and void? So I've also heard that Japan owns our debt. Again, if Japan's coming in with billions of dollars to invest, would that indicate that we have debt forgiveness? So where did this debt accumulate? I'm assuming I mean, well, and a while ago when Aaron talked about the Federal Reserve, is that where our debt is through? Since you are a money man, I figured you might be able to help me understand how all that works.
Yeah, and sure enough, the U.S. debt clock, I report on it every show, and I'll continue tonight. The U.S. debt clock has put together an amazing PDF. I don't know how many cells it is or slides it is, but it goes from the very beginning in a very quick way. It's not like a textbook. It's just showing you slide by slide the history of banking, how we got to where we're at, where we're currently at, where would we be going. To answer the debt thing, it really gets down to understanding what debt even is. And I don't want to get too into the weeds of that, but it's how are you in debt? How are we in debt? How does one become in debt to something? Right? It's another term for owing. And so the roots of that is based on the current system, the Federal Reserve System. By every dollar that's printed, they charge interest in addition to that dollar, right? So every time a bill's put out, let's say it's $100 billion bill that they agree to, it gets approved, it gets authorized, all that stuff goes through. It gets sent out, issued through the Fed to us. That's $100 billion. Then they charge their interest on top of that. And so, generally speaking, when you hear about debt, if you're talking about the Fed, it's the idea of the money we owe to them based on them having the authority to give us the money we've used since they've been instilled in 1913. But where we're at now, it's a geopolitical interweb of many, many, many factors that are above my pay grade. That's why, even if we had those answers, we're not in a position to take any actions. But that system that we're headed to is been designed and it's transitioning that way. That's why all this day-to-day, what's going to happen with the money thing, I don't hear any experts, supposed experts, referencing this U.S. Treasury dollar data. So I don't pay much attention to it because I honestly think this is the direction we're going. Now, I could be wrong, obviously, but as this gets closer and closer, it's getting clearer and clearer to me. So who are we in debt to? That's the key. That's the question. What's the old system? What's the old guard? What's the old ways? They controlled all the money. It appears that Trump has cut the circulation off to the old system, that money system. That's what Doge was about. He's implementing a new U.S. Treasury dollar as an alternative for the world to join in on outside of that Fed scheme. Now, that's how I see it. I could be wrong, but it's a genius if that's what's occurring. Because that Fed scheme was designed to destroy us exactly as it was. It was designed to wring us out slowly, and at the end, one big sudden move, basically, because at that point they'd have the leverage. That's what it takes time for them to get the leverage. In a sense, they got the leverage on America in 2009, 2010, when private entities owned more U.S. land than private citizens. That was a turning point. I can get all deep into this, but yeah, that was to me that was like, okay, well, how does the average person compete with corporations on a real estate level if they've already passed that point? That's just going to get faster and faster. Those corporations are just going to vacuum up. Anyways, and that's what was taking place. So where we're at now, it appears that a part of this transition is going to be funded by the fraud, by the assets that were used fraudulently or acquired fraudulently with those executive orders you mentioned, the crimes against children, crimes against humanity, foreign and domestic interference in elections. Those there were several executive orders, but those two particular ones were like a firewall put in place years ago for this position now. That was a long-winded answer, but does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah. So I mean, so it kind of, and if my takeaway, if we can put it down to simple terms, is it's a contrived debt. It's basically this private entity decided, oh yeah, we're going to charge you to print your money, so that you can think that you can spend, you can spend it, but we're going to charge you for it. So it's contrived.
And it sounded good back then because they crippled us to the point where we didn't have many options. And that's how they usually do that. They'll cripple the entity they target and then inject the fiat as a solution, knowing that it's just a matter of time, one generation to the next before they have ultimate control. That's the idea.
Well, and basically they owned us. That's the reason why, if you go back and research on the, what you're saying is kind of makes sense. So, because if you go back to what they talked about on the birth certificates being our bill of lading, so to speak, and they basically, we were their commodity. That's the reason why they needed us enslaved. That's the reason why they need illegals to keep enslaving everybody. Because the whole idea is, if you have the illegals enslaved, then you're going to enslave the rest of the population too, because because having illegal immigration taking up what they call, they like to call it, well, no American would want that job. That's not necessarily true. By then, it suppresses, if maybe I'm hopefully I'm using the right term, but it suppresses what the Americans can do, and so it keeps the dollar lower. And I don't know, I'm not good at explaining this. You may know what I'm trying to get at, but the reason why I thought about this is everybody keeps talking about, with all this deportations and everybody in this, everybody keeps talking about how California's stolen land, Texas is stolen land, and Arizona's is stolen land, and it belongs to Mexico. And it's like, no. If you go back to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the U.S. bought or paid off Mexico's debt, and that's how we acquired the land, with the treaty for that. Just like we got the Louisiana Purchase, we bought the land and the control. So, and I'm thinking, well, if that's the case, then we really aren't the United States of America. We're actually belong to China and Japan then, if they're the ones that hold our debt. So that's how I got on that rabbit trail.
Well, so that's a good point, though, in a sense, when you start talking about like China's debt or Japan's debt or our debt. So if the Fed did that to us, which they did, and the birth certificate, as you said, that was like the token into the system. It proves that you're there's a physical body to represent that name, right? And they use admiralty law. But yeah, so if they can do that to one country and one person, basically you're born into their system as a baby without even knowing it. Your mother, if she registers your birth in their system, you're in. They don't know. So from birth, you're in the system. Now imagine each country that has the Federal Reserve or the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF connection. That's almost every country on earth has had that parasite. Since the Federal Reserve was implemented in 1913, they've gone around using our U.S. military to implement that system in other countries. And at the point we're at now, what was the list? In the early 2000s, it was, I think, 7 countries that didn't have a Federal Reserve. And so that was their game, total control using the monetary system. They had already gotten to the point where they almost had global control. And so if Trump is doing this, if that's what he's in a sense doing, he's not just freeing us as slaves, he's freeing the world as slaves. Every country that's been a host to that parasite they had no way out. No country has had any way out, and all the bucks, potential bucks, stop in the United States of America. That's why we've been the center of this for the last, I don't know, I was born into it. You were born into it. They were strategizing this a long time ago.
Yeah.
So if he's freeing the slaves, that's like Abraham Lincoln, but version, I don't know, 2.0. I don't know, some clever, that's bigger, and that's a global version of Abraham Lincoln.
Can you imagine the genius it would take to have to set up a plan to counteract this debt fraud?
It's beyond fascinating. That's we being a part of this, we try to think through it, knowing we don't have the answers, and just to trying to imagine the intricacy in this. Obviously, in my opinion, there's a lot of tools being used to help. Maybe quantum, definitely computers help, obviously, but whatever this has been well planned. I'm skeptical. We have to be skeptical. Like at our position, why would we trust anything until proven it's trustable, right? Money wise, for sure. But it does seem to be a direct deviation from the direction we were going. So I don't know.
Oh, gosh, it just blows my mind when I try to think of it in that kind of in depth. That's the reason why, and this is the reason why I'm like, I just want the money that they stole off the sweat of my back. I could live off and you know what? I could live off a $2,000 or $3,000 stipend a month. I mean, it'd be enough to pay my car payment and maybe have a little left over to save to go on a trip or something. But I mean, and I've said this before, I've known of people. My dad never really got to retire because he had a stroke and when he was early 50s, and he couldn't work anymore. My mother, with all the issues she had, she wasn't able really to retire in a sense. They were both on disabilities. They really didn't get a chance to enjoy retirement. I actually worked with a guy. He already had like 3 retirements because he started off, he worked, military, you go to fire department, and then you work with the state. And so, these were people that started young, right? And he put in his paperwork the day his retirement was supposed to take place, and he was, no longer. He had a heart attack and died. He didn't even have a chance to retire. And on the flip side of that, I've known people who retired and they were busier than ever. It's just that they were able to live off of the retirement and they didn't have to worry about whether or not they had to, they couldn't do something because they were financially tied and couldn't do it. If that makes sense. So.
Well, and I mean, systematically year over year, that fiat dollar has lost 3%. So if we're talking about 1960s, 1970s, well, yeah, your dollar went a lot further, and then you add in the fact they divided the family in the 70s, doubled their tax base by dividing the family, getting the woman to go to work. That also hit a lot of the leverage by doubling the tax base. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
In other words, they knew that one provider was not going to be able to sustain the future of, the tax rate. So they had to divide the family to get 2 taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
And I have conversations. I like to talk to people that were here before me, right? Because I was, I ask, like, what did people talk about these things back in the 60s and 70s? Were they aware that there was being, brainwashed or manipulated, or was there even a thought on that? And some people seem to be aware of it, but it seems the information that we have now has helped waken up us, this generation. I was born into it. I can't speak before that, but the information we have access to has rapidly woken up people regarding this scheme where, 30, 40 years ago, I don't know if there was unless you had keen interest and a curiosity and some sort of idea about this, how else would you find out about it? It didn't matter what kind of degree you got in school. They didn't teach you this kind of things. They would teach you ways to profit, personally benefit, but no matter what you did, it would only reinforce the system. And so there's no threat to that. There's no degree in the world that could outsmart the Fed, in a sense. You can only encourage it.
Yeah. Well, I know my dad. I know. I shared this with Chris the other day. My dad was. I mean, he was a country boy, right? He grew up on a farm. He was a country boy. He, read the Bible, knew the Bible, and very, very Bible literate. He didn't go to seminary. I mean, he did because of tradition, because of family. He did join the Masonic Lodge, but as he got it more into the Masonic Lodge, he realized, some things weren't adding up. Like his one big thing was, we're not supposed to call anybody else Lord Master. There's only one. But he told my grandmother, watch the Middle East if and this was in the 70s when he told her that, right before she passed. But, I know he and my mom were all, Oswald was not the lone, they were on board with the clowns. JFK that was an inside job. They were on board on that. He told me, oh gosh, once he asked me, I was probably in high school. I remember, maybe it's when first time I got to vote. He asked me who elected the president. I said, well, it's the Electoral College, I just went through government. And he said, nope, it's the banks. The banks are. And the reason why they wanted to get rid of Reagan or try to get rid of Reagan is because he wasn't the yes man they thought he was going to be. So, and there was
blaming banks is like blaming a gun.
Huh?
Blaming a bank is like blaming a gun.
Well,
but he's right. But yeah,
what he means is the banks. Because how did the presidents get elected? They had the backing of the banks. It's like I think Erin talked about how they can they put in people who can raise the money. That's what he means. If you look at it from today's standpoint, it's not. It's look at the campaign. Look what they did to Sarah Palin under McCain. They said,
those that run the banks use them as a tool for power. Yes, it's a tool. Yeah. Right, and he's right about that.
So that is, and there was what was the other thing? So anyway, he was his big thing, he didn't like doctors. He didn't like doctors, and he did not want to give the government any more than what they had. So he, for most of his adult life, he was a wholesale hardware salesman. He would go and sell tools. But that was his thing. The two big things when I was growing up, he didn't like doctors because I guess the pharmacy, because all they did, and my mom was always on so much prescription medicine that, in the long run, she was on it for like 40, 50 years. So, 50 years. She was on, they kept changing her medication, and so she became a prescription drug addict. And eventually it killed her. And so that's what I mean. You asked if, for people who were born before it started to become obvious. I think there were people who knew. I don't think they knew how to fight it because, look at what you come off of. You got World War II. Because my dad was born right at the end of World War II. And so you got that, and then you had Korea, then you had Vietnam, and on and on and on. And that's like where I get so frustrated when people rag on President Trump for not going to Vietnam. Well, guess what? My dad didn't go to Vietnam. He wasn't like I said, he was a country boy. He was a hard worker. He had a very great work ethic. He lived out in the country, and but he didn't go to Vietnam because when the draft was going on, he was able to get deferments because he was married and then he had a family. And my mom told me that by the time that he was about ready to volunteer to go, um, the they were pulling people out. And my uncle was in the military. He was in the Navy. He didn't go overseas. He was stateside the whole time. So this whole idea about President Trump being a draft dodger, and I'll even say this, Muhammad Ali was a draft dodger. How many of the real draft dodgers went to Canada to avoid the draft?
Is it possible for a Christian to put patriotism above their God? Be irresponsible where they place patriotism on their hierarchy.
Probably.
What's our hierarchy of focus as a Christian? God first, right?
Yeah, God first. But I think it's possible that I think anything's possible because people do it all the time. They get their priorities mixed up.
Is it God, country, family? What's the order of that? God, family, country.
Well, people, this is I've heard it both ways, and my take on it should be God, country, family, because without how are you going to support your family without a without a godly country? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but Jesus focused on the individual, not the political side of grouping people together.
Because he knew the corruption of the politicians.
If the person is corrupt inside, then the fruits of that tree will just create more corruption.
And I know it's misquoted it's misquoted often, and there's Romans 13:1 is often misquoted because as a way of allowing the government to control you, but it is, there is some truth in, what the, God allows the governments, but oh man, I could go on back. I've been working, going through the Bible study that I've been doing that I do on my own, and going from Genesis 1:1 and building off of that. And right now being in Kings and seeing how the split happened after King David and what happened, and seeing what, it was all about the people, the Israelites, not worshiping God the way he said. We are supposed to be, as a Christian, you're supposed to be set apart from the world system, and unfortunately we have allowed ourselves to be I don't know if you want to say tricked or conditioned, conditioned to believe that government will solve all of our problems, when that's not the case.
Well, at what point does a dollar bill become an idol?
That's a good question. I would say that if it was my opinion, probably when that's what you focus on, and which is a hard thing to say, because I realize today, instead of looking for God to be our provider, I'm looking to man, and it's like, oh gosh, I need a new computer, I need money, but God, I need it from, I'm not going to, God's going to provide, right? Instead of saying, okay, Lord, you know what I need, you're going to provide what I need, right? Instead, going out and say, hey, can you send me some money? Things like that. When we get our emotions entangled in everything, and like we let fear take, because you're living in, when you're living in that narrow
we're born
focus.
Into the fire. We're born into the fire. We're born into the fire. How do you put out a fire you're born into? We don't.
Well, if you don't have the right
how do you
tools,
stop it from letting it burn you up in the process, I think is the key first step.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if I explain it well or not, if it makes sense or not, but
it does. It does. I like these conversations. It's, as whatever our belief system, it's we get to choose ourselves. So if we get it wrong, it's, that's the last thing we're trying to do, I would think. So ironing it out together, iron sharpens iron, right?
Right. Well, and the whole thing is, if you make sure whatever you're contemplating or whatever you feel or believe, just make sure you can back it up with scripture. Find the scripture to back it up and understand the context, because there's so much stuff in scripture that is taken out of context, and that's the reason why I wanted to go from the very beginning, from Genesis 1:1, and because if you go, you can understand what's going on. Why is this happening? Instead of, just picking out of choosing a chapter of the Bible and say, okay, this is how it applies to your particular situation in this way. This is how, this is how Abraham resolved a conflict. But if you have, because that's the reason why it's a living word, because it can. Let's see, how can I say this?
It's universal to the times.
Well, it's universal, but also, you could have two or three situations. Let's see if I can. Maybe your situation is a little bit different than mine, but you could take the same scripture, and that scripture could talk to you in a different manner than it talks to me, because God speaks to us on our own level. He comes down and speaks.
Mm-hmm. It's relative.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you took that word. You took that word. That's the word, relative.
And it also seems to get clearer as we get closer to the time.
Right. So.
Similar to Q.
Yeah. Right.
So, if you want to affect the future of humanity, you plant seeds for them to grow on along the way.
Right.
And that's what the Bible was, in a sense, and has been, and it continues to grow despite the, the battle to confuse us in that.
Well,
and there is a battle.
Well, it is. Well, that's because Boogerface is on the earth, and he's here to kill, steal, and destroy. And he wants to.
Right.
He hates humanity so much. He hates God's creation so much. He wants to. He wants to take as many people down with him.
Hide us from source. Keep us separate from source. Mm-hmm. Confuse us to think that there's no source and the world has all the answers.
Yeah, that's like there's clips of this guy out there. I don't know. I think his name is Nicholas. I think anyway, he goes out to these pride events and just all he's out there is saying God loves you, Jesus loves you, and people will challenge him. He doesn't get angry. He says, "Well, Jesus came down and love." Yeah, some of the stuff that they spit at, kind of try to use scripture against him, and and they always take that. Well, God created me like this. No, God created everything and it was good. It was the fall of man that skewed everything with the disobedience. And Jesus at the well, yeah, he said he had compassion. Don't get me wrong, he did. He came to save people. He came to be that ultimate sacrificial lamb to do away with the Old Testament sacrificial system. But he also said, go and sin no more. People forget the holy and righteousness. They focus on Jesus's compassion and and
who did he speak with when he came down here? Jesus. Who did he focus on?
He spoke to the common man. He spoke to the people that were being oppressed. He spoke to the ones that were being enslaved.
Why didn't he start at the top?
Well, because they knew the corruption. But because if you go back to the Old Testament, and see, I'm probably going to mingle how this is said, because God told Abraham, told Moses, told Joshua that the moment that man stops looking for God as the provider, because God had a system with the priests, the judges, and the prophets to be to govern, and because the Eli and Samuel, because they were not keeping reign over their sons, and their sons were corrupted, the people rebelled, and God told Samuel that the people are going to rebel. But he also says, when you put a king, this is what a king's going to do. He's going to basically enslave you. He's going to take your men and put them to war. He's going to take your women and put them as servants. And so nothing new is, what we see today, there's nothing new. You can go back and see the same thing happening in the Old Testament of the Bible.
So
It's
basically, he was letting us know we couldn't vote our way out of it.
kind of.
Yeah, and so it's an individual spiritual choice. And he focused on the poor people in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not, the average person back in the day, that the poor, he didn't focus on what we consider wealthy, but he focused on the poor. Is there a difference between poor and broke?
Well, there's a spiritual brokenness. You can be spiritually broke, just like you can
Right,
be
or spiritually poor. But what's the difference between poor and broke?
It depend. I guess it would depend on your perspective.
If you gave me let's say I'm broke, I'm like, Deb, I need $1,000. I got to fix my car. I'm in a pinch. I'll pay you back. And let's say you trusted me enough. You gave me $1,000. I fix my car. I'm on the way, and then in 3 months' time, I pay you back. Am I poor or broke in that moment?
I don't think you're either. I think you just needed help.
Well, financially, just broke.
All
Now,
right.
let's say you gave me $1,000 and I went out to the casino and I go, you know what? I'm going to turn $1,000 into 10,000 and I lose it overnight and I never pay you back.
Then you're broke.
How much money could you have given me that would have solved my problem? None. So there's a huge difference between spiritually poor and spiritually broke.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that those that don't understand money are poor. No, the system's designed to you not understanding it and keep you poor, permanently disabled spiritually. And so the fruits of that wicked tree have been long running. And Jesus sort of was created a good picture of that, in my opinion. The only time he got aggressive was, the money changers flipping over the tables at the temple, which we talked about last time. But he didn't use aggression as his tool to solve the problem. He got people to realize that their whole perception of reality is bogus. It's not just fake news, it's fake world, because they're born into a system that's designed to keep them separate. And if they don't separate that, they'll never rise above. They'll be poor eternally. That's how I take it.
Yeah, well, you got to remember too, when Jesus came as the humble servant. He came as what we would so it kind of.
But
like,
can a poor parent teach their children how not to be poor?
I think you can. You just have to.
How? How can somebody teach something they haven't learned themselves?
Well, that's a good point. I think if they want, I don't know. You probably got me there. I'll have to think on it.
Well, what's a generational curse?
Well, it's basically you learn the habits of your parents, and you keep going, and it's up to you whether or not you're going to break that curse. But there's also a spiritual attached to that. There's a legal spiritual attachment that can,
if we believe it,
that can be an influence. But I was going to say that when Jesus came in as that humble servant, people were looking for the mighty warrior, a man on the steed to come and slash around, get rid of the Roman Empire, the Roman rule. But first, Jesus had to take care of the spiritual, the spirituality. He says, I did not come to do away with the law. He came to fulfill it, which is the 10 Commandments,
right?
The sacrificial. So once he did that to restore the relationship between God and man, the next time he's going to come in as a mighty warrior. He's going to come in with the righteous and holiness. He's not going to be a humble lamb. He's going to be that lion, the lion of
Right.
Judah. And I think people just don't realize that or forget about that part. They're still looking for the humble servant, the meek
Well,
and mild lamb.
so with the money changers thing, going on your point, going back to that though, is there a difference between what the money changers were doing to the people then, right? Confusing them with their sacrifices and being the authority in their sacrifices. And in their reality that time, that was their life. Their only way out, their only out, salvation, so to speak, was if the middleman, the false authority agreed on their sacrifice. Is there any difference between that and spending 40 years working for a federal fiat dollar that has an illusion of value?
Well, no, not. I mean, when you put it that way, I don't think so. Because remember, the money changers. It wasn't just that they were.
How many 401k accounts do you need to get into heaven?
You can't. I mean, zero. Really zero. Because, like they said, you can't take it with you. You store your treasures up in heaven.
And you could burn $1 billion and it will be fire for a while, but it's disappeared and forgotten,
Right.
like
It's all
leaves in the wind.
ashes. Yep.
It's an idea. It's a perception of reality. It's very deep and wicked. And so ideally, if God were to create a money system, not putting myself in his shoes, just knowing the infinite power, unimaginable power, I would imagine that God would create a fair, honest system if it were needed. There's certainly ways to do it.
He did. If you and actually he did. If you go, in fact, and if you just take the Ten Commandments, but also go back. I can't remember if it was in Hebrews or not Hebrews, but Leviticus or Numbers when he set up the governmental system, and he made the definition what is murder versus what is killing. Kill is what is used in war. Murder is the premeditated, and he even talks about the judgment for manslaughter and how there was a way that if somebody, but he also talks we have the reason why we have the weights and measures department to make sure people aren't being cheated. That goes back to the Bible, because God talks about the weights and measures. Don't cheat. Let's see. I can't try to find it, but he talks about
what's cheating?
Giving.
Definition of cheating. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's just it's an idea.
Well, you're trying.
We agree to it.
I'm having to think.
When there's rules that we all agree upon, whether it's political or a board game, we agree to rules. That's what makes a game. A game is rules. And so the idea of cheating is when somebody goes outside those rules to, get an advantage of some sort. Right. It's a basic concept.
Well, that's like he says. Okay, so the scripture about the weights and measures, it's basically don't put your hand on the scale until you're. If somebody's coming in to buy something, don't put your hand on the scale and say that they owe more than what they should. And the other way is don't rig the scales where if you owe somebody that, make it balance. God's about balance and order and chaos. So when you have the system that we have, and to your point about the money changers, it wasn't just that. It was they were selling flawed sacrifices to these people. So they were ripping the people off. They weren't, as you pointed out, they weren't just cheating the people. They were cheating God. They were putting the people in a situation where the people who were making the sacrifices were cheating God. So you had two people cheating God for the sacrifice, if that makes sense.
Well, they created their own new set of rules in defiance of God.
Yeah.
And confused us to not even look to the ultimate order of things. And then when we do, there's a lot of confusion as to who that order should be going to. And it appears a lot of the people that are in positions of power have gotten power and continue to maintain power by enforcing that illusion
Yeah. Well, and I
on
think
a spiritual level.
yeah, and I think people have because well, for the longest time, people didn't even have a Bible in their hands. They relied on what was passed down verbally. They didn't have a written
Most
word
people
in
couldn't
their
even
hand.
read.
Exactly.
Most people
So
couldn't read. So how did you learn, right?
right.
How did people learn? And we couldn't verify. We were told it, and that's what we learned, and that's what we passed on. And whether it worked or not showed whether it was true. And, in a sense, it takes a long time, but that's a good way to figure out what works.
Yeah.
But that's rapidly sped up as information and publishing and, education. As that stuff has grown, it's rapidly grown with it. So,
Well, and that's the reason why the Reformation is so important with Martin Luther is because for the first time under King Henry VIII's daughter Elizabeth, I think she's Elizabeth the First. She was the one that the driving force to get the Bibles into the hand of the common people. Of course, you also, like you pointed out, someone would need to know how to read, and for the common people to read. But I'm sure there was something. I think maybe she's set up the schooling system. I don't know. I don't remember that part of history, but I do know I saw something about King Henry VIII that she was the one that mainly she did it out of defiance of him because of how he treated her mother, But the whole idea to get the Bible, the Word of God, into the people's hands so that they can learn. So so people have missed the point that the corruption in the spiritual leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, plus the political leaders, the government, that didn't go away when Jesus went to the cross. That didn't go away. And besides, and don't forget, you do have secular people out there. So it's just not people that is, these aren't just people in the Bible. There are secular people that talk about Jesus and his, you have Josephus, you have Constantine, you have, I don't know them all. I mean, I'm learning a lot of this after all this years. I'm learning a lot of this just by reading, again, doing my journey through the Bible study and going from Genesis 1:1 all the way through. That was my goal. I thought I was going to be able to do it all in 1 year, but life happens. Got moves, counter moves.
yeah.
So it's taken me longer.
I recently did that myself last year. It was one of those things where, and I never gotten away from it, but if you don't spend a lot of time regularly in it, you can forget a lot. So I was like, you know what? Let me go back to the Old Testament. Like that's, and it's helped me just last year. It helped me connect a lot of dots that, 10, 15 years ago, I was oblivious to. And it grows. It only grows. And that's how you just keep going with that. When something grows, you don't have to question it. It just fills you up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well,
whatever that is.
That's another reason why I say that the word is living, because when you go through, I mean, dependent on your maturity, because Apostle Paul talks about being mature, and when you first start, you're on the milk and then pablum, and then you get to the meat, and as you grow and mature in your walk, then things are clearer. I mean, like I said, I'm finally understanding the whole idea of the split of the kingdom of Israel. Israel. The true Israelites are from the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, and then you had a split, and God had appointed the Israelites through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to be I guess you could call them the light. The light to reflect God's love and to be set apart. They weren't to be doing the child sacrifices. They weren't to be doing the false gods. There is only one God. All the other ones are false. And that's the reason why you have Elijah challenging the the false gods and winning because God showed him who he is. I mean, when you think about it, it's so, I mean, I get kind of excited. I'm getting kind of excited thinking about this because of, uh, you know, and I've lost my train of thought again. I hate when that happens. But Elijah and the split, and I
Well,
mean,
there,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, you're describing the battle between man and the hybrids, right? The fallen ones that were here before us, that were described in the Old Testament. You're describing during Elijah's time. What was he battling?
Well, the false gods, the
Was those
gods,
hybrids, right?
well,
The giants.
the gods that sacrifice children, Baal.
Well, which is the fallen angels, right? That's who Satan's supposed to be. Is one of the head of the angels, and fell in defiance of God. And some of them angels went with him, and they've been here ever since. That's my understanding, right?
Well, that's what the flood was about. Now, is there evidence that some of them did survive? You know, you have Goliath. The Goliath is
Well,
an example. That's a possibility that they survived. But
so that's the point I was trying to. So who were the fallen angels? Well, the angels were a higher level being than man, correct? And still are, correct?
I guess you could put them that way. I mean,
Well, they
when
at
you
one
think
time.
about the Nephilim, because because it's such a small blurb in the Old Testament, it just, there's just like, just mentions. It's
Well, that's
kind of like a
based
footnote.
on probably based on who had control over the original publishing of the Bible. If I had to guess, I don't know, but there's a lot of confusion. We can go back to Greek and Hebrew and the original languages. Whatever we're looking at, we can try to fix some of that English issue with going back to the original languages. There's a lot of confusion with the English translation itself. But the point is that they were fallen angels, and angels are above man. That's my understanding. They were with God at one point, like God's at the very top.
Actually, if you go to
Legion, his
Psalm,
team.
well, and when you go to Psalm, because we're going to be actually judging over angels once we get to heaven. So, that is.
But we're
I
not there yet,
haven't
right?
gotten- I
Right
haven't
now, we're
got-
still man, and the angels are above the fallen angels. They're more capable than man. Correct? I'm trying to. I mean, I know what I'm saying, but I'm trying to get you to understand what I mean, so we're on the same page.
Well, I'm not.
Or is Satan equal to man?
No. Well, it depends on, well, when you say that, in what context are you saying that? Is Satan equal to man?
In any context, Satan offered Jesus the world.
Right.
Okay, does he do that with man? Well, maybe.
He does. That's the thing. He does.
But so who has a authority or a false sense of authority? Man over Satan or Satan over man?
The false sense would be Satan over man. We have authority. Well, we do. Let's see. We have. I'm trying to.
Yeah, we are below the angels. That's my point. They from the Bible, they are spiritually above us. We are supposed to ascend. Ideally, we're going to ascend to that level, become more like God, staying the same as what we are, but ascend to a level we can only imagine, in a sense. They come down from that level in defiance of God. They're higher spiritual beings than we are, in a sense. I'm not saying closer to God. They have more capabilities, is the point. They use those capabilities to manipulate us. So the flood was talking about, the giants and destroying the giants. After the flood, were they gone? Are we trying to figure out, are they still here?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, then what's...
There's a fit. It's kind of a footnote. There's speculation about. I mean, because Goliath is considered, the giant Goliath is thought to be maybe a descendant of them. But you got so there are mysteries, I guess you could say, that still haven't been revealed. I guess you could probably that haven't been made clear. That's one of those things you just go to God. I mean, that's the reason
I'm trying to
why we
get to
have
a
the
point,
Holy,
though.
That's that's the reason why we have the Holy Spirit to help us, guide us in those things. There is a spirit, the
Yeah.
spiritual war.
So what's the difference between a giant or Nephilim and a demon?
I think it's the physical presence. A demon can manifest itself, but he could also be a spiritual entity that influence,
A spirit without a vessel?
Well, yeah.
A spirit that's looking for a vessel.
Yeah.
Right? Like, remember when Jesus cast out the spirits into the pigs and ran them off the cliff?
Right.
He saw the demonic energy, put them in the pigs and ran them off the cliff?
Yeah, I'm having a hard. Yeah, that's a good example. I'm trying to see. In my mind. I'm trying to. Let's see. I'm trying to. I don't know if I could see. That's the thing. I'm not very well versed in to explain what I mean.
So,
just like you're saying.
Well, I'll throw out there what I'm trying to say. Let's say the fallen, the angels that fell, took man, mated with man, and created a hybrid. Is that hybrid 100% man? Nope. Is it half man, half whatever the angels are? Yes. And so if the angels have DNA-wise more capabilities to us, then the hybrids would have different DNA. Correct?
Yeah. That's a theory.
And so if they have, right, it is a theory. I'm not saying this is fact. It's just, I'm just trying to make sense of the difference between a physical being and a spirit side. And if those hybrids had a physical being with the spiritual side that they weren't necessarily designed to do so with, right? What happens after they pass? What happens to the spirit? I think Jesus tries to describe this. I'm trying to make sense of it myself, but I think that's what Jesus tries to describe. We're not going to understand it because we're not going to be able to see it. We're going to sense it, have instinct for it once we understand the sensory side, but there's a disconnect between the physical and the spiritual, and whatever the hybrid was seems to have affected us on a spiritual level continually to this day. Well, and it gets into the area of, possession and go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying not to get into the area of possession. I haven't gotten that far into my studies and understanding yet, but from what I understand about the spiritual versus the physical, oh gosh, again, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I don't think God designed us with a open back door in a sense, as far as possession goes. It's something we have to willfully and foolishly can, fool ourselves into.
I think one of the biggest things that our spiritual leaders, whether you follow a priest or a pastor or minister or whatever clergy, a rabbi, whatever clergy it is, one of the biggest things that they have failed to do is, and this is a very generalized, because I do know that there are people out there and that are more adverse into this, but as a whole, as a generalization, okay, that they didn't teach us spiritual warfare. When you go into spiritual warfare, when you break down, I wrote the book on spiritual warfare, not spiritual warfare, putting on the armor of God, when Apostle Paul talks about putting on the armor of God, and I broke down every piece, and I'd explained how it, I went in a different direction than what most people do, and I haven't found anybody to help me kind of pull it all together to try to get it out there for people to look at. But when Jesus even tells us, we can do healing. We can, because of his authority. By his authority, we have that capability of doing it. But we've got to.
I would bet if you give humans enough time, they can do anything.
Well, yeah. But that's the thing.
I think the imagination is the most powerful thing created in the universe that we are aware of.
Yeah, it's and it goes back to because we weren't. I know I wasn't taught. I wasn't taught about. I mean, how many when you go to a church? Hold on a second. I mean, if how many people grew up in a church? You hear about God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, and it's kind of like everybody focuses on God as the Creator, Jesus as the Savior, but no one. I have yet to be in a church that talks about the Holy Spirit as the advocate, as the helper. They said, well, listen to the Holy Spirit, but I mean, it's like learning how to write. How do you know unless you have the basics of ABCs? How do you know how to write sentences until you have that structure? So I think what's happened is if people understood the power that they have through the Holy Spirit, that's the reason why government doesn't want us to know these things. Because if we knew that I mean, it's like if you put it on a more secular level, if they knew that we were no longer ants because there's more of us than there are of them, they would be running scared for their lives. Boogerface would be running scared for his life if he knew. That's the reason why we get, it's been suppressed. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to learn how to do it.
Confusion is 100% successful until the truth is revealed.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And so none of us are going to have the answer as per reading like the New Testament Revelation from a Christian perspective. None of us are going to have a clear picture. It's going to require Jesus coming back and correcting it in a sense. We're being grown to that point for, in the long run of things, I guess. But none of us are going to have the answers until that ultimate truth is revealed by God himself. And so we're in a sense, we're born into confusion, doing our best to try to find order out of chaos. And the world's trying to show us all these directions for order, but there's seems to be always an order above what the world seems to offer. And then when you go that direction, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Or, some crazy dude that likes silly games.
Yeah. Well, I think Virginia Dare makes it pretty good. And it says it still will be God doing the healing. He just uses us as the conduit. And Carol, God is not the God of confusion. That's the thing that's the reason why if we looked, who's our source of information? If we keep going to God and Jesus, because Jesus says he is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one can come to the Father except through me, and he is truth. Jesus is truth, and that's the reason why when we gird our waist with truth, that's the core. If we gird our waist with truth and realize that Jesus is the truth, and the way, the truth, and the life, that is what holds everything else up. That's our core. So.
Right.
Who knows?
We're thrown into a pretty chaotic world, just trying to find our own, security, individual security, and then group security. And anyways, it's circles and cycles, so it's fascinating the way it repeats itself.
Yeah,
It's good conversation, Deb. I love this stuff. And again, I don't have the answers. When we think about similar things, we come across similar thought patterns there. So it's fun to share it.
I may actually just break down instead of publish the book and just read my book to people, and because
have you followed Chuck? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
I interrupted. I apologize.
When I was reading the book, when I started digging into what each piece of the armor is like, every single piece comes to one thing, and it's all about Jesus. And when you take the sword of the Spirit, people say that the spirit of the sword is the only offensive weapon, that everything else is defensive. The sword of the Spirit is also as both, can be work as both.
Have you listened to Chuck Missler recently or lately, or familiar with him?
No, my schedule is I barely have time to. Um, I'm always. It seems like my downtime.
No,
My
that's
day.
okay. We're all, limited on where we can get our information. It's not that you're bad for not hearing him. It's just what he passed away in 2018, and I wish I would have found him earlier in life. But that guy basically is um, put I don't know, basically his whole life into trying to understand exactly what we're talking about, and some of his conclusions are extremely insightful. And he'll be the first to say, don't trust him. Verify everything yourself for yourself. But he has helped me put together the Old Testament in this last year by reading it directly and then listening to a lot of his stuff together. I did it in a year with his help. And if I was by myself doing that, I'd still be doing it. It's just that information thing, that double-edged sword thing. It is Chuck Missler. I can only share him enough, right? I wish I would have found him earlier in life, but he's the one that brought up the point about his own personal journey about patriotism, and it didn't dawn on till later in life where he put that in his own Christian hierarchy. And it's interesting to see an older man looking back, realizing things, because we're gonna die with a lot of questions, and we're never gonna be perfect. So even in our elderly age, we're gonna learn. And that patriotism topic, I stole it from him. I didn't think of that myself. I got that directly from
So
Chuck Missler, and it's key.
so what was his conclusion about patriotism?
He doesn't say to tell you what to think. You can just see in his eyes his conclusion for his own life is he had it too high. He served in the military and a lot of other capabilities, but that patriotism thing is used very, very deep on people.
Yeah, I can
So,
see
and
that.
not having served, that's an area I'm very sensitive to with other people. I have nothing but respect for those that have served, right? And so it's not a judgment thing at all. You can look back at history and imagine all those wars. Those were real people having to be a part of it, whether they wanted to or not. It's nothing new under the sun with that. But how do they convince people to engage and kill the next person under ideas? How do they ramp them up and get them so ferocious? When we're watching football, it's cool to destroy the other team, but we're talking real lives. And patriotism seems to be that tool.
Well, you think about, since you've read the Old Testament, look how many of the, let's see, David, King David, he was, let's see, gosh, I just did King David, and I'm on King Solomon. I just finished up King Solomon. When King Solomon, with all the women and the women he married, the women he took as concubines, whether, out of political alliances and everything. After a while, God said, "Okay, you're going to be, you're going to be attacked. Physical. It's kind of in a way, now that I'm thinking about it and talking about it, it's almost like a kind of God was getting the correction into King Solomon by, not letting him have peace. David, even though David, let's see, David was a man of war. That's the reason why God wouldn't allow him to build the temple in the first place, because he was a man who was at war with somebody all the time. King Solomon had a period of peace, but because of his basically leading astray, the with putting up the false worship, the putting up the altars for the false gods for the people to worship, the false gods, and that's when God says, okay, because of this, the kingdom's going to be torn away. But because of David, even David was a flawed man. He did something very, he committed iniquity against God by taking Bathsheba, having her husband killed. He let's see, I missed it again.
That damn Jezebel spirit.
Yeah, well, Jezebel hasn't come on the scene yet, but the whole idea is,
Not yet.
yeah, not at this point in King David's time, but because he told God told King Solomon, hey, you follow like King David did. Oh, that's what it was. Because David repented, but you know what? After that incident with Bathsheba, that's when his sons, he had two sons coming after him, trying to usurp the throne, trying to overthrow his reign. I mean, that one particular incident really messed things up for David, and he was never he was at peace with God, yes, for restoration, but when it came to the physical, he was not, because he was like I said, at war with people, or his own sons. And then King Solomon come on, and God say, hey, you have an opportunity. Even when he split the kingdom, when God split the kingdom, and he took a servant of King Solomon to split the kingdom. He gave there's two tribes, Benjamin and Judah, and because of David, the king. Oh gosh, I know my time is up, but it's just fascinating. And so, guys, if you want to learn more about this, uh, go back to First Samuel. You can go to my Rumble. You can go to YouTube. I have these videos all about what is happening. I am in First Kings. Uh, I'll be on First Kings 16 the next time I speak of this. But I mean, it's the same pattern over and over. God gives people, said, "Hey, if you do things my way, I'll keep your line. I'll keep everything established. But if and he gives them a period of time, kind of I guess what you would call a grace period, to show that they will do, and if they do the wrong thing. But you see the kings of the south, or the kings of the south through um, Judah and Benjamin, doing more right things, but eventually the apostasy, the worship of the false gods will get them in the end. And that's what's happening today. It's God's restoring all of that. We're in the birth pains, not only of the birth pains of Jesus returning, but it's also a restoration. We're seeing the birth pains of a restoration. And with that being said, and
Right?
I hope I make sense, because when I say it in my head, I start thinking, well, does this make sense?
Yeah. It's good stuff, Deb. I'm
Okay.
enjoying the conversation. It's no rush. I'm not booting you out of here. I've got stuff to share, but it's, no rush as far as that goes.
Well,
No pressure, at least.
I appreciate you coming on, and just I didn't expect to do this. It had this kind of conversation. It was just really to say, what do you think about debt? And that was how, because you being a money man, and I just really got to thinking. It was like, well, do we really have debt, or is this a false manifestation that to keep people thinking that we'll never, or just to keep us enslaved, you know?
Well, we could test that theory. If we can't repay the alleged debt, then what's their solution? Like, ultimately, even in that scheme, we've had the power all along, but we just stop. Like, if we refuse to pay the debt, what are they going to do? Who has the power? And that's another side of the wicked side of that money system. But it was an illusion.
Well, I have definitely.
If we,
Go ahead.
if you realize your neighbor's stealing from you, then you'll stop dealing with your neighbor. And if he tries to go over your fence, so to speak, you have laws to protect yourself. But when you realize the money system's just stealing from you, what recourse could we have? When the banks are still, the governments are under that umbrella, what is a person going to do?
Good point.
So we're coming out of that, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too, because I've come to the conclusion I really hate money. I mean, I was thinking that I went and got some groceries today, and I'm like, I really hate money. I hate money because you have to buy groceries. I know people like, you know, the farms are going away, so we don't have, we don't have, uh, you know, for those that grow their own food, we don't. It's and that was designed because if you notice, have you noticed how many multifamily buildings are going up around town versus single family homes and neighborhoods? They're slowly getting rid of the single family homes, and they want us in these little
Yep. It's
cardboard
it's
cutout boxes.
global corporations market. Absolutely. I actually came from commercial real estate right before 2020 there. And so, yeah, you can make a lot of money in that area, but you're dealing with the belly of the beast, so to speak. That's where a lot of the fraud is. Even not the fraud, just the entities you're involved with. If you have no morals, there's a lot of potential there. If you
Yeah.
don't really care, you just want profit, But I saw that firsthand.
Well,
Pretty
and you
scary. You could see it systematically when you step back. It's like, oh shit, 20 years from now, what does this mean? Well,
well,
doesn't take a rocket scientist.
sorry, I keep accidentally cutting you off. It's that delay, not knowing. But yeah, and where do they buy the land to build these things? They buy up farms. Some of it is farms, not just undeveloped land.
All real estate deals, it comes down to the land. The improvements on top of the land are just improvements. But if a fire takes out the improvements, the land is the initial deal, always. It's always about land. Every real estate deal is about land. Every deal. Whether it's a billboard that has, what's the square footage of the base of a billboard on a highway? Those big signs we drive by and they're making a bunch of money. That's probably one of your most lucrative real estate deals is owning a billboard. If you look at the base of that, that's, they have to pay for the play. Anyways, it's all about land. Now, what do you do with the land? That's where the development side comes in and creativity and a lot of fun. But, that's the, I don't know. There's a lot of potential there, but that's just like in the heart of the beast, those real estate deals on an international level. One of the corporations I worked for, large corporation, I was some of the work I was doing, I had to do research. For the work I was doing, I had to do research on some of the land side in Washington, D.C. area. And I was like, wait a second, that's curious. Let me look around here. And I was looking up property values in Washington, D.C. And then I was looking up property ownership because a lot of that stuff's public. And I realized the corporation I was working for owned many, many houses there in Washington, D.C. And not just my corporation, many large corporations. They buy up that land, they own the houses, and then they use those houses as perks, incentives for a lot of their employees. And it's all corporate accounting, right? But if you're an individual in Washington, D.C., just trying to compete on that level, I mean, you better make a lot of money. That's sort of what we've been dealing with. Man versus corporations, not a good formula.
Well, I always got frustrated. I don't consider myself an environmentalist or a tree hugger, but sometimes I look at these places that being developed and I think, man, you're tearing up the natural beauty. I mean, there's got to be a better way if you want to develop something. I mean, you were you ever in the Austin area? Because I know whenever I was in the Austin area, and inevitably whenever there was a brand new construction, like whether it be a mall, a parking lot, something being developed, they always took away the natural vegetation that would keep the mountain spores in check, and everybody always said that they had allergies because the mountain cedar, and the spores. Well,
Yeah.
they would take out the natural vegetation that because there is a balance, and God made things to be balanced, and the stuff that would
Yeah.
have kept that stuff in check. And that's the reason why I don't necessarily like development, because they don't do it the proper way.
Well, that's where the idea that we have local representatives protecting us is an illusion, because ideally our representation is supposed to you look out for our better interest, whatever that might be, whether it's, which is very real what you're saying. You can overdevelop almost any area if there's no checks and balances. And so that's where we're being let down on a local level, and their hands have been greased for a long time in those deals, and so what I extrapolate on, and I could be wrong, but if you really want to succeed in real estate, you almost have to play the politics game, and that I despise. On a commercial level, residential is different ball game, 100% different ball game.
Well, I think just about anything you do nowadays, there's a politics. Schools. I mean, think of I work with the school district. The politics. I mean, after President Trump started, taking away the USAID and the schools, on the state level and the county level, and now they're like, oh, well, we're going to do away with the after-school program at the community center where I've been working, and they decided that, like this summer, last year they had summer camp, but it was free, but this year they made the parents pay for it for their kids, which, for me, it kind of worked out better, I think, because I didn't have to cook. And now they're trying to get a grant so I can cook, for this next, the school year will be starting in a couple of weeks. And so long story short, they're going to go ahead with where I'm working. They're going to have an after school program, but it's not going to be connected to the school district, I think. Way it has been structured, it's going to be a separate entity, the way, if I understand it correctly. And they've filed a grant to see if I can continue to work. So we'll see how that happens. So we are going to have the after school program at the community center as before, but if they don't get the grant for the kitchen, then I will probably be as a staff member and not the kitchen staff. So we'll see how that works. But anyway, well, Dano, as always.
Yeah, that's politics is everything.
Yeah. All right. Well, as always, I know. I'm hoping. I'm at this point. I'm kind of wanting to see I know there's things happening around in the background, but right now I'm kind of like to see some of the results of the background stuff.
Yeah. Are you getting used to winning yet? Not enough winning. Not enough winning, I hear.
I'm still on that. I'm not feeling the winning.
Right.
You can see
right.
it, but I'm not feeling the winning yet. Once I feel the winning, or see a little bit more. I mean, I know it's all because there's just so much, and it seems so complicated, and I just I just can't get my enthusiasm up. I think that it's too bad that we don't get the Q drops. I think if the Q drops would just kind of affirm that we're on the right track and kind of give us a kind of an estimated time that we're going to really see some fruit of everything we've been fighting for the last, for some of us, 10 years since President Trump came down that elevator or escalator, versus those that have been fighting this fight for 40 or 50 years. I think once we start really seeing some fruit, I think the excitement will come back, at least for me. At least for me. I just want to see some of the fruit.
Yeah. I want to taste the fruit, right? I can make you a good picture of fruit. You'll want to buy it, but I want to taste that shit. I want to make sure it's real.
Right.
Exactly. Without worry of being poisoned.
Yeah. Just don't inject that poison. I mean, I know that. They're taking away the mercury. Did you see that about RFK Jr.? They're going to take the mercury out of the vaccines.
I'm seeing news on that. I'm not keeping up day to day, just to be honest, just to be fair on that. But yeah, I've seen a lot of news about people going behind his back or going behind Maha back, trying to get things done with that. Was that relating to that? What you're talking about? Were
I
they?
don't know. I just saw something that said that he's RFK is I don't remember how it was worded, but no more. He's taken out the mercury out of the vaccines. He's taken the COVID out of the scheduled shots. But you know what? It's when you hear more and more about someone working behind the scenes, like President Trump firing the labor statistics guy for putting out false information about the jobs market.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, so you still got these placeholders, I guess you could call them, or these gatekeepers. Until like I said, uh, and I mean, you got these activist judges. People are blaming President Trump because the Epstein's files won't be released, but it's these judges that are holding it up. Are they holding it up for legitimate reasons? Is it really to protect the innocent, or is it just because they can, just because it's to hurt President Trump? And
We
that's
won't know. But keep in mind the news is complicit in this, so don't expect them to be forthright as this is unraveled. You know.
that is true. And speaking of that, was that Christy Noem said that Operation Mockingbird is still in play, and she's shutting it down. Did you
Yeah,
see that?
I did. I saw Tulsi Gabbard speaking
Oh,
directly about it. Yep.
Gabbard. Yeah, I said Christy Noem's Tulsi Gabbard. I get them mixed up sometimes. So
And to me, you're looking at QComs. I don't need QComs directly from Q at this point. It's those coms when they speak that clearly, that shows you where they're at in the game. It's not a like a psyop or a rabbit hole. It's nope. If they can speak that clearly from an investigative process, law and legal and lawful perspective, if they can speak that clearly, that tells us a lot.
yeah,
Usually if things are being investigated, it's still, trying to be proved. You don't talk about any of it. And you certainly don't show your hand to your enemy. Unless, what?
unless you're about ready
Where are
to
they
drop
at?
unless you're about ready to drop the hammer.
Uh, this is that moment, Deb, that we've been waiting for. And from my perspective, it's we've been waiting. When is he going to go forward? When is he going to play offense? He's playing offense now, and there's no going back. There is no going back. And so if there isn't a plan, we're screwed. If there is a plan, we better fight, because every president that's attempted this before, we've seen the results. And just because he's gotten this far doesn't mean they're going to stop. What is Obama's biggest out? If this is true, what's implicating him? What is he waiting for? What would he, if you're in his shoes, what is your best out? What are you hoping for? Who are the people that are handling you, and what games do they play? Is it over? No. Is awareness 100% required for this to have any success? Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what Q was for. We were taught, we went to school years ago in a sense, only getting 40 to 60%. We were used in a military operation. They needed the public to archive the truth in the past so the future lies couldn't be used in the future. Right? It's this 5D chess thing. I don't want to, break it all down. But yeah, we were part of a military operation. That's what Q was. They had to get the public engaged because the other side they had total control over the narrative, that there was no chance for any success unless the people could see that people were in control of the narrative. And it's taken this long in some sense, but look at TDS and how effective controlling the narrative is.
Well, now that NPR PBS is going down, maybe some more entities. Well, and Stephen Colbert's out, but the thing is he's not out until 2026 unless they somehow wrap up his position quicker, and he's out by the end of the year. But can you imagine? I mean, we're already into August. I mean, can you imagine this? I mean, and midterms. Midterms are coming up, but it seems like we say this every single voting cycle too. It's like something's got to happen, something's got to break, and Like I said, sometimes you
That's a
just
good. That's a
you
good
get
point.
you get battle weary.
Absolutely. How many people have fallen off in the last 6 years, 5 years, especially since 2020? And I understand that it's not being critical. How long can somebody be strung out on potential truth when they have bills to pay and families to feed and sick people to help and you know the Q thing. It's understandable why people would turn on that. It's a longer game.
Yeah.
It was a longer game. Now we can look back. We'll be able to look back more and more and more. We're right here. So in a sense, I don't think we need Q. It's going to prove itself. And if we have any questions, Q's still there to verify. Every drop is still verifiable. And if I had to predict, the left aren't going to get into Q like we were. The timing of Q was more important. But if they ever have questions, they can see where we were coming from all along. And when that corresponds with what's coming out legally and lawfully, they're in a position of catch up or get out of the way.
Yeah.
In a healthy way.
Yeah. I think Dan Scavino must have been listening to us because he says he just posted justice must be served.
Yeah. The appetite of MAGA has been built for 10 years. The appetite of the left has been built up. All appetites are leading to the same buffet table. And none of us on either side knows what's for dinner. We have an idea. We have a better idea than they do. But I bet you all of us are going to be surprised in how this unravels, if I had to guess. On the particulars, right? A lot of these things that we've speculated on, we could only speculate. And as this stuff plays out, let's enjoy that side of it. If that's the case, how close were we? Were we close? As that stuff plays out, we'll be able to look back and go, boom, okay. When the cool thing about math, as boring as it is a lot of people hate it. It's the only subject that you can prove you're right when you walk out of the classroom.
Especially if you do 2 + 2 is 4.
Right. And everybody agrees before you leave.
Well, and because if you're doing algebra or trig or anything, and you have to do the formulas, then you have to plug in the right information to get the right answer. That's the reason why that 2 + 2
and that's
is
where
4.
you have to show proofs. I remember that. I hated it. Prove your work. No, I know the answer. Why do I have to show I can prove the answer? I know the answer. No. Yeah. Proofs. Very, very important.
Yeah.
I didn't get it then. I wish I would have understood it better back then. I was, you're a kid. I was a kid. Don't know anything back then. Bunch of big ideas.
I still don't know anything. What are you talking about?
Right?
I think I know.
Right?
I think I know, but do I really know what I think I know? And what I know, is it true?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And then that begs the question, what's real? It seems that it requires us to observe it for it to become a reality. That's a key factor there. Whatever this design is. Anyhow, good conversation, Deb.
Yeah.
What do we got? I got about 30.
Yeah, you got about
40
30
minutes
minutes. Sorry to take up so much of your time, but I just, and again, thank you for just coming on and,
Keeping it real.
no, keeping it real, but bouncing off ideas, keeping it.
Yeah, no, chat's enjoying it. I've been following them. They seem to like the conversation,
Yeah, it's easy.
And Erin does such a good job with the news. Again, like, do we just want to repeat what she covers?
That's the reason why I try not to. I try to find some things that people don't really focusing on, because there are things happening. For instance, the Manhattan shooting. I know that LT talked about it in AUK, but when you start digging into the shooting, and you start looking at what happened with the Manhattan shooting, I think the guy targeted it just doesn't make sense. If the NFL was on the 5th floor, and I get it, he took a different bank of elevators, but even then, why did he go all the way to the 33rd floor, where the investment, all the investment things were. So to me, there's something wonky in that. So I really think and I shared Thursday morning that way back when, during President Trump's first administration with all the MK Ultra narrative, there was a theory that whenever a sports figure, whether it be NFL, NBA, uh, baseball, Major League, MLB, race car, if someone died, there would be a shooting. So it kind of makes you wonder if there wasn't a connection to that. So with that being said, I'm not going to take any more of your time. So you have a good one. Have a great show. Finish up your show, and then I'll be listening to you on Tuesday. So have a good one.
Sounds good, Deb. Yeah, have a great weekend. I'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Alrighty.